Russell Westbrook is traded to the Utah Jazz, but he's still on his way to Denver. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, the head coach of the EuroLeague championship team has challenged the Boston Celtics. Should that be something that the NBA actually looks into? And then lastly, we're going to look at Bleacher Report's list of the worst offseason moves in this past offseason. We're going to get into all that and more right after we play this intro.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central. Bobby and Haize, we in the building today. But with that said, hey, deal just went down today. Russell Westbrook was traded from the Clippers to the Utah Jazz in exchange for Chris Dunn, who the Clippers are now acquiring in a sign and trade. The Jazz will be buying out Russell Westbrook, who then plans to sign a deal once he clears waivers with the Denver Nuggets. How you feel about the deal, Bobby?
Not mad at it. I think the Clippers could have held on to him if we keeping it a buck. But for Denver, I think it's an okay deal. I don't necessarily know where he fits in. I think he will be able to provide that spark off the bench if that's what the idea is for him. And honestly, that's what kind of makes the most sense, at least for right now. Just let him go ahead and be that spark plug off the bench. I guess they trying to find their quote unquote Bruce Brown per se. But the three-point shooting is not there, but you do get other things that come along with Russell Westbrook. And we seen last season with the Clippers that he was awesome off the bench in his limited role or his new defined role for that organization. It was a bit shaky for the Los Angeles Lakers, but he got his footing together. And I think that for the Denver Nuggets, I think it's a step forward, but they still got so much more to work on after those KCP loss and the Bruce Brown loss. They got to recover still.
And that's the thing with this Denver Nuggets team is that while they've maintained most of their starters, they're a big example of why role players are important because they lost Bruce Brown, they turned around, lose KCP, and you could tell the difference of the umph that bench does not have anymore after you losing just Bruce Brown. Can't imagine what it's going to be like after losing KCP. So Russ gets to come in there. I like the fit of Russ on that Denver Nuggets bench and what he can bring there. It doesn't really replicate the defense that they've missed from those two players, but you know, he can definitely be a spark plug offensively. He can get you rebounds. He can still assist. He's still somebody that almost averaged 2 steals per game as well last season. So he's going to be active, get you out in transition, what the Denver Nuggets like to do. Overall, I think it's solid. They still got some things that they need to do, in my opinion, if they're going to be my favorite to come out the West again, because they're just not that for me anymore, which they were the last 2 years. Yeah. But they acquire some more depth, which is really nice, and we'll see what comes after that. I guess
I'm with you on that. I think that what's interesting to see who fills KCP's spot. Like, are you going ahead? Are you going to trust Christian Brown now with that role? Because or is Mike Malone now going to look to a Michael Porter Jr. to have a expanded role in this, to kind of say this is their homegrown big three per se? You know what I mean? Because we know that Michael Porter Jr., I believe he has more in the tool bag than, you know, what the roster allowed, you know, based off personnel last season. So it'll be interesting to see if Mike Malone be like, hey, Michael Porter Jr., we know that I don't really have the averages right in front of me right now, but let's just say, hey, Michael Porter Jr., I know that you can increase your scoring output at least another 6 to 8 points, possibly. So I can't wait to see what they're really trying to do in regards to Michael Porter Jr.
Facts. And then, I mean, you look also at some point, you got to hope that some of these young players that the Denver Nuggets have been acquiring over the years step up. Like, I love the fact that they drafted DeRozan Holmes this draft, but he tore his Achilles in summer league.
Oh my God.
He's not going to be, because I think that he could have been really good for a team that hasn't really had a quality backup center that because he wasn't going to be looked at to play a whole lot of minutes, that he could have been nice for them. But they still got young players like a Julian Strawther there. They also signed P.J. Hall, I think, as an undrafted rookie, who was somebody in the draft that I think can contribute because he's a really good scorer. So maybe they're looking to recoup some of that depth by some of these young players stepping up. So maybe that's the case as well.
I mean, that's what it's kind of turned into with the NBA nowadays. You know, you still got the Phoenix Suns with their big three, and now the Sixers with theirs. But it seems like if you're looking around the landscape, teams are pretty much just, hey, we're gonna go 1 or 2 stars, and then we're gonna fill this thing out the best thing as we can. You know, because of the new CBA and all that stuff. So I guess what's more sustainable for the future is developing these young guys. So hopefully they are able to do so expeditiously for sure.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. How do you feel overall about this trade for the Clippers? I know we kind of focus heavily on Russell Westbrook, which is the biggest name in this. The Clippers, who also lost PG, they went out, they got Derrick Jones Jr. had a nice finals run with that Dallas Mavericks team. They also brought back Kevin Porter Jr., who maybe because Kevin Porter Jr. being able, last time he was in the NBA did score over 19 points per game. Maybe they're looking at him and bringing some things that Russ brought, which is why they feel a little bit more comfortable about moving him. How do you feel about that Clippers team and how they've kind of not rebuilt, but revamped their roster here on the fly?
I guess the Clippers are following, that criteria, what I just mapped out with the 2 stars that they have, and then just kind of filling it out everywhere else. The money that they that was gonna be given to Paul George went and pretty much into 3 players. You know what I'm saying? They pick up also Nicholas Batum, Kevin Porter Jr., and then the other one I can't remember. Oh, Derrick Jones Jr. So they picked up those guys. Those guys gonna be able to be, versatile enough to allow the Clippers to do certain things, but then also make up for the games that Kawhi Leonard is expected to miss. So,
yeah, I mean, they have a solid enough bench when you look at it as well. Kevin Porter, Norman Powell's coming off that bench as well. Batum, who's still a pretty productive player. So, and you never know what you're getting for PJ Tucker. Like I know that PJ Tucker has been kind of washed, but it's like every 3 years PJ Tucker has a really good season.
I don't know, real.
It's like every leap year. He's on the leap year schedule at this point.
That's a fact. And then out of nowhere, he was ass last year. So this year, you never know. He might heat up from the corner 3 and be, have people paying attention. Well, from the corner 3, PJ Tucker is the most efficient guy.
He's near elite from the corner 3. It's like, all right, fam, I see what you're doing there.
You already know.
All right, man. Let's move into the next topic today, man. So I'm not even going to try to pronounce these teams' names because I've been murdering names all season. So I'm not going to do that. But the EuroLeague head coach, he's the coach of the team that won the EuroLeague championship. After the Boston Celtics won it, and they tweeted that they were the world champion, he basically said that he basically challenged them, saying that if you want the world title, come and beat us, the EuroLeague champion. If you're so confident, I say come beat us in Oka. OAKA. I don't know what that is.
I don't know. So, y'all correct us. Let us know. I know somebody
getting it typing. But how do you feel? Like, and the question I want to throw to you, I know that this is the whole world champion title after what Noah Lyles said something about it. It's kind of been on the rise since then. But do you think that we could ever see a world in which, as an exhibition game or something, that we do see the NBA champions against the EuroLeague champions, which is the second best league in the world? Do you think that they could ever do something like that? Because keep in mind, we see some EuroLeague teams come over in the preseason and take on some NBA teams. So,
me personally, I think it'll be great for the love of basketball. You know what I'm saying? Even if you don't say, hey, we're going to go ahead and compete for a large trophy, you can go ahead and compete, for bragging rights, but also the expansion of the game. You know what I'm saying? This is already an international game, and everybody know that the best players reside in America. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be a great display to see those other European talents that we never really hear about or see, or we hear a little bit about them, and then they come to America and play in summer league, and they can't adjust properly, but we know that they're much, much better overseas. Because Haize, how the hell is Patty Mills a cheat code for Australia? But in the NBA, he just a 3-point shooter and a seasoned vet and a champion. But over there, it seemed like he got the clip.
Jimmer Fredette went over there and ate over in EuroLeague, bro.
That Marbury is a GOAT in China, ain't he? I don't know. I'm just saying, I think it'll be interesting. For sure. I think it'll really, really be interesting, but I don't think it's going to be like a 7-game series or anything like that. It'll probably be a charity event. One game.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that, like you said, for the expansion of the game, and it'll just be a fun thing. Like, and I know risking injury and things like that are always a thing, because I tell you what, NBA players are going to look at that as probably a glorified all-star game the first couple of years, and those EuroLeague champion going to come over here trying to bust ass. So
that's a fact.
Yeah, so that's something you got to be prepared for. But like, as we do expand the game, and as even because ESPN covers EuroLeague, they're airing the EuroLeague finals now and things like that. So as the awareness of European basketball is becoming more widespread, right? Like for the longest, it was us basketball nerds that really knew the EuroLeague basketball. But now, as ESPN and more of these American outlets are covering it, you're going to see a new fan base grow in it. And I wouldn't mind at some point if it get into the point of like, all right, bet at the end of the season, the NBA champions, you take your week off. We're going to go and play one exhibition game against the EuroLeague champions.
I think it'll be funny.
Yeah.
A lot of fun too. So I'm all for it. Hey, just can't I understand, Haize, you said a week. And I know this is ridiculous. And I know that'll never happen. But can we just wait until that dry spot of the summer? So we ain't got nothing to watch.
Yeah, because we're about to head into that. Because literally, I love how the NBA condensed offseason, right? So like the finals ended, and then the week later it was the draft. It was the draft lottery, and then it was like 2 weeks after that we were in the draft, and we've been rolling free agency everything since then.
Good.
But after summer league, we got like a month of it just gonna be dry as hell. It's gonna be a lot of football coverage, and that's about it.
You feel me?
Yeah. So that would be fun too. That would be fun to have it in that time period. And that could be like the basketball version of the Hall of Fame game, just the first game of the preseason.
Facts.
The former champions against the EuroLeague champions.
Oh yeah, right before I think that's a great idea for sure. Somebody send this up to them people.
Ain't listening to us. All right, man. Moving on from that last topic of the day, Bleacher Report have a list of 5 offseason moves that will look terrible in 3 years. Is the way that they titled that. I want to see how you feeling about this list, Bobby. First one on this list they had at number 1, the Miami Heat not trading Jimmy Butler. How you feel about that? That being listed as a move that will look terrible in 3 years.
It might. I ain't gonna lie, because you already then got to the finish line twice with Jimmy Butler, but you didn't cross the line as the victor. So it's been paying itself, and you've been in contention. But these injuries and these missing games are starting to pile up, and you already know it's a couple teams out there that's vying or at least want the opportunity to push for the championship. Hey, if I was Miami, I know the Sixers wanted to right their wrongs this offseason and try to get Jimmy Butler. I would have went up and see if I can get something to go ahead and change the trajectory for my Sixers versus for the Miami Heat versus allowing the Sixers to go ahead and at least have another solid 3 years now that they picked up PG. You know what I'm saying? I would at least try to acquire something in return to make sure that we're good. But I think that with Jimmy Butler and his last few years with the injuries and the up and down performances from the Heat as a whole, it's a little shaky, but it ain't over because Khalil, well, I like that young fella to help out Bam Adebayo for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I get it why they say that, especially if Jimmy Butler does end up leaving, which is a definitely case, and they couldn't get nothing back. It could turn into a situation where they do regret not moving on from Jimmy Butler. But you got to look at it this way. The Miami Heat are an extremely confident team. They're a team that always punches above their weight. They added Khalil Ware, which is going to move Bam theoretically back to the 4, which could be huge for them. You had Jaime Jaquez, who was one of the surprise rookies last year. On top of that, Nikola Jovic took a step up for them as well last year in a young player. And they could be looking at it and saying, well, if we do need to make a pivot or whatever else, they still have not cashed in on moving Duncan Robinson, moving Tyler Hero. They have contracts that they can move. So Miami Heat may be looking at it and saying we're in a position where we felt we may have re-upped enough to still go on one of those runs that we go to, especially if Jimmy Butler can stay healthy and get hot again. And then if push comes to shove at the trade deadline, it looks like Jimmy's going to be a flight risk and lose for nothing. Cool. Let's go ahead and start making some moves.
Yeah, that's a fair point too. And I know that a lot of times all of us as NBA or sports fans per se, we love to hear about the next big trade or the next big move. But to your point, that's a valid move because they do have their youth right there. And all these guys are stepping up. And we know one fucking thing when it comes down to the Miami Heat. The culture is real. They don't play down there. It ain't fake. It ain't nothing something that everybody just talk about. It's real. And if you ain't prepared, you will lose against the Miami Heat. And they believe that when healthy, they can get there. And I ain't mad at them.
Yep. So we'll see. We'll see. Next up on the list, one that affected our team, the Kings giving DeMar DeRozan $74 million over 3 years. Now, we and you are very familiar with DeMar DeRozan. Still a very effective player. Not a defensive threat at all, but is somebody who can get you a bucket at the right times. There's times where he can absolutely save your team when you go on scoring droughts and things like that. Sacramento Kings already had a former clutch player of the year in De'Aaron Fox. You had another one now with DeMar DeRozan. Do you think this is a move that the Kings end up regretting in 3 years?
No, because they held on to Keegan Murray.
Mm,
Everybody was trying to pry away Murray, and they was able to get an all-star, a future Hall of Famer who can close games and who's
mm,
relatively healthy. He does not miss games. And against some of the younger teams, your Timberwolves, your Memphis Grizzlies, that's gonna come back around, your OKCs, the Houston Rockets, that's gonna be trying to fight and crawl up or climb up the charts. You need seasoned guys to close out games, and DeMar DeRozan know how to close out games. And I would say it's a fair deal. You know what I'm saying? Because his game is not based on athleticism. So at least
mm.
for the next 3 years, you're gonna at least get a 20+ point scorer, and he gonna be able to close the games for them and provide them with some great moments. I don't think it's gonna be a terrible thing in 3 years.
I agree with you, and I think that it's something. Maybe the last year of that deal, maybe if we're looking
Yeah.
at anything. But I because I've seen every game that DeMar DeRozan has played, every single game for the last 3 years. Like I see what DeMar's done. Now, at some point, are you risking it? As a player keeps getting older and older, are you eventually going to run into a situation where they get that major injury? There's that question and that concern there for sure. But you also look in like what DeMar didn't have in Chicago was a team full of 3-point shooters. You got De'Aaron Fox, who shot the ball almost 37% from three last year. You got Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter, who over their careers have been really good 3-point shooters, even though Kevin Huerter took a step back last year.
Mhm.
And like you said, up front, you got Keegan Murray. You still got Domantas Sabonis. Keegan Murray's a 38% 3-point shooter as well. Like I understand the questions on the fit there offensively. But we heard the same thing about the fit there offensively when DeMar DeRozan first came here. And when everybody was healthy, it still looked great. So I think he can fit in with this team. They're not, they're a team that played the fastest, but I think DeMar has shown that he can adapt to a more up-tempo offense. He's just not great off ball. But I think that a DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis pick and roll can be a very, very dangerous weapon for this Kings team next year.
It absolutely can. And then we talked about the fourth quarter scoring and you mentioned it. I just gotta reiterate it one more time with De'Aaron Fox. That explosiveness from him. And I believe that he should come into the season with a chip on his shoulder. We know a few years ago, they was in every game with Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't have the experience or that killer. Now they got one. You know what I'm
That's
saying? And they took that step back. And these guys should come in with chips on their shoulder. We should expect a great year from De'Aaron Fox. And DeMar DeRozan is going to let him shine. He let young guys shine in Chicago. He's going to allow De'Aaron Fox to shine over there, but then help him when he needs the help.
That's a fact. That's a fact. All right, let's get into the next one. The Spurs trading the number 8 overall pick. Now, this is an interesting one because a lot of people came into this draft assuming that the Spurs were going to get their point guard of the future to pair long term with Victor Wembanyama. Now, that's not what happened. They ended up trading the pick. They still get Stephon Castle in it, but they had several point guards that were right there that they could have drafted to be on this team and to pair with Wemby. They ended up signing Chris Paul in the offseason. Like I said, they still got Stephon Castle, who they ended up drafting to add to the young players they have there. They also got Harrison Barnes from the Kings in the 3-team trade. They sent DeMar to the Kings and with the Bulls. How do you feel about the Spurs deciding to trade their number 8 overall pick?
At first, when I looked at it, I didn't really understand it because I'm like, man, you gotta take as many bites at the apple as you can with these young players, especially with the discussion that was surrounding this draft that is being one of the weakest in history. Look, I don't know. I believe only time will be able to tell that. You know what I'm saying? But for this one, I'm not mad at it. You know what I'm saying? Because they pick up additional assets for next year and what is believed to be a deeper draft. So you can go ahead and see what's going to happen with your guard spot. And I believe that the mission right now, they probably went with a guy who they believe has higher upside with Castle. You know what I'm saying? He's a bigger player and he could probably provide a little bit more. I believe he was UConn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he comes from a winning organization already. And then he's going to be able to provide that for the San Antonio Spurs. And now you got the mentorship of a Chris Paul. We don't know how we've seen the history with Chris Paul and him positively affecting guards. We'll see what type of effect he has on Castle and even Wembanyama too.
Yeah, and I think that's like, I get it that they didn't get the point guard that a lot of people thought that they were going to get. Like Devin Carter could have been potentially great for this team, things like that. But let's not overlook Stephon Castle either. Now, I know that some people think, is he going to be a pure point guard? Is he going to be more of one of those combo guards that you have to kind of fit in? And that's a fair question at 6'6", things like that. But like, you still got a young guard in this one. It's just not the one that people thought you were going to get, which,
Right.
it is what it is when it comes down to it. But like you said, the Spurs specifically in next year's draft, which is supposed to be an extremely deep draft, could have 4 first-round picks.
We in there.
They own their own first-round pick. They own the Atlanta Hawks first-round pick outright. And then they'll get the Charlotte Hornets pick if it's anything lower than number 15 and anything lower than number 10, they'll have the Chicago Bulls pick. So, I mean, at that point, they're just playing the averages, and you can't be mad at playing the averages.
Exactly. And then you never know what Castle is going to turn out to be. And then you still got more bites at the apple next season.
Exactly. So, yeah, they the Spurs are another team, much like we talked about with the Miami Heat. They have a culture there, and you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean everything's going to work out. A la Jeremy Sohan at the goddamn point guard last year, which
I don't know what we doing.
Bro, Pop was just doing shit, bro. I maintain that. Pop at that point was just like, hey, man, I'm Greg Popovich. I just feel like doing some shit. Let's have some
right. That's a fact.
We want to make sure we have a good draft pick next year. So, yeah, 30 games of Sohan at the point guard. Why not? Let's experiment.
That's a fact.
But I do like that they got the point guard and Chris Paul here. And for nothing else, for the development of Wemby. Now you can eliminate what Wemby would look like with a distributing point guard. And you can also have Stephon Castle learn behind him. So, I think that the Spurs, they went about it a different route, but let's not act like they don't have the number 4 overall pick in the draft just because they traded number 8. That's all I can say.
So
next one on this list, LeBron James committing to a lackluster Lakers franchise. I'm gonna start off on this one. Listen, they drafted his son. They gave his son a guaranteed contract. He wasn't leaving. That's all I got to say on that one. How do you
That's a fact because, and then the crazy thing is, and we don't even got to spend that much time on it. But the crazy thing is people was like, Rob Pelinka, he can really leave, bro. You just drafted his son. Do you think he's going to leave? Like, stop playing with us. Stop playing with us. And he's 40. He need to be chilling with this organization until it's time to call it quits. Exactly. He don't need to jump ship anymore. Sit your ass down. Hoop for these few years you're going to hoop. You ain't going to win much. Just keep running up the records and call it a day. Play with your son. Jeez.
And he lives in California? Come on, man. Like, hey, what are we talking about here, bro? Like, LeBron James' legacy is what it is at this point, right? Like, anything that he does over this last stage of his career isn't going to affect his legacy. So, I mean, why not wait around? You went to that Lakers franchise. You basically have the keys there. They're going to do whatever they can to keep you happy over this time. Listen, not to say that it won't look terrible, because I do think that there's something to say about just going ahead and going younger to kind of more so build around AD. But at the same time, worse things have happened, bro. Is all
exactly. They the Lakers. Somebody gonna want to go there. They'll be high.
That's a fact. Last one on this one. 76ers giving Paul George a 4-year, $212 million year. If I'm not mistaken, Paul George, 34 years old. How do you feel about locking in a player, Bobby, until they're 38 years old in the modern NBA?
If I'm the 76ers, it's a win if we get to the third round. Call it what you want. Call it what you want, but it's a win if we can get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
That's fair.
That's it. That's all you need. And you know what I'm saying? Because it's a bit tricky with Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, hella skill, hella talented. He just can't stay healthy at the right times. Mm-hmm. Paul George allows you to take a little bit of pressure off of him, and he's not Tobias Harris and just sitting there when you need him. PG is going to be able to step up. And if PG get a little iffy, I seen Tyrese Maxey step up when James Harden decided he wanted to clock out. When Joel Embiid wanted to clock out, Tyrese Maxey was still going 100 miles an hour from rim to rim. I ain't got no worries about it. You gotta take a chance, and it ain't too many chances that they could have taken. You couldn't get Jimmy Butler back. So you got to go ahead and go and add additional talent to this squad that you need. You need a player like that. So I'm not mad at it at all.
The only way that I would have looked at this as a bad move is if they got Paul George and that was it. You re-up Tyrese Maxey. You get Paul George. You get Caleb Martin, who's a really good role player on top of that. You get Andre Drummond, who, especially with Joel Embiid and his injury concerns, taking something off a little bit of that load off of Joel Embiid. Andre Drummond's really good at that. You get shooting with Eric Gordon. Like they did a lot here that makes sense. Now, am I saying they all of a sudden a championship contender? No, I'm not going to say that. But as to kind of revamp that roster that was a very stagnant roster, they've done a really good job of it, and they've put themselves in a place where even if Joel Embiid misses his prerequisite 20 games during the season, they put themselves in a position where there won't be as big of a drop-off as what's happened in the last few years.
And they don't know how the chips going to fall. You know what I'm saying? The last few years, Giannis has been hurt.
That's true.
Damian Lillard, he has last few years, he played a decent amount of games last season, but prior to that, hurt. Chris Middleton, he just had surgery on both ankles, Haize. Something I don't really hear too often. But then we talking about the Cavs. Can they get their guard situation under control?
Yeah.
Miami Heat, can they stay healthy? So it's still kind of wide open outside of the Knicks and Boston, in my view. The Sixers, this is a swing, and you get to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a win for the process.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Any other thoughts, Bob, before we get up out of here, man?
Now, y'all just make sure y'all tune in every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Yeah, so for those announcement towards the end of this show, we know that we've been very inconsistent on NBA Central. And so one of the things that me and Bobby wanted to do, especially heading into the next season, is bring some consistency. So as Bobby just said, you are guaranteed episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at the bare minimum here. And then, of course, breaking news, things like that, the kind of shorter videos, you'll still get those periodically throughout the week. But as far as the full-length episodes, you're going to get those way more consistently now. That's probably be the first time really in the channel's history that will be that consistent in delivering content. So make sure you guys stay tuned in. It won't always just be me and Bobby. Sometimes we'll get the other guys in there as well. We may even live stream sometimes as well during that. But there you guys go. Hopefully you guys appreciate it. Hope you guys show up as we're trying to get back to growing this channel. And we appreciate you guys, man. All right, you guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And we'll see you guys the next time we feel like making a video, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.